Rusame reader, Kurosong, and today I will be reading to you from Everlasting War by Cake. Now, on to Chapter 20, Dagger.
Армия Британии полностью разгромила прусскую армию, заявив о своей победе. Султан Саудовской Аравии заявил, что его война должна закончиться через несколько дней, в том числе благодаря нашим добровольцам. В мире наконец-то должен быть мир.
That roughly translates to, Britannia's army has completely shot down the Prussian military, claiming victory. Sultan Saudi Arabia said his war should end in a few days thanks to our volunteers, as well. The world should finally have peace. Russia leaned back in his chair in relief, throwing his head back as well. Ukraine laughed and continued talking to her siblings while Russia drowned them out. He had lost 3 family members. Only one he actually loved. Fell in love with Britannia's crown prince, learned that Saudi Arabia was expecting a child with Iran, and that he'll be marrying him in a month, and had just received a letter from King Britain saying that he needs to treat his son well, and that was his only wish. And only within a month did all of this happen. Now, peace could finally become a normal thing again, and he could finally feel what life was like. Russia just became the youngest monarch in history, taking the throne when he was 18. Just recently he turned 19, but before he took the throne, Saudi Arabia of Hayal was 27 when he took the throne 6 years prior. Now Russia was indulging in a new experience without any help. It scared him. He didn't like it. His mother should have been there. Other monarchs should be there. But there's no peace anywhere. The most peaceful empire was thrown into a war. An already war-ridden kingdom was yanked into another war. Everything just had to be violent. Russia. That roughly translates to Russia. Russia looked up at Ukraine, who was the only person left in the room. Twentieth. That roughly translates to, are you coming? Niet, was all he answered, earning a sigh from Ukraine before she left the room, closing the door. Now Russia was alone. He looked outside of the window, it overlooking the town. He watched the crowded streets. It looked much better than when Muscovy was at war. Now, instead of only women and a few children in the streets, almost everybody was outside as they finalized their adjustments to life without war. It was rare for these people not to have any men at home anymore, but they were full of happiness now. People getting their fathers and women getting their husbands or brothers back. Very few men from the town remained in the army, as culturally, people in small villages around the kingdom were the men who joined the military. Not just men, however, but also some women too. All Russia had to do now was hope the population would increase. Maybe he'd get rid of or add a few laws to help with that, but for now, he stayed put. Russia. Russia turned around to see one of his sisters standing there, a worried look plastered on her face. She had her hands folded behind her back, which was a sign that something was wrong within the family. Yaponia shul yerda, Uzbekistan mumbled, her voice quivering as she spoke. That roughly translates to, Japan is here. Bazincha u Soviet unshan kwasos olkuichi. Couldn't find anything that would do this properly, but it roughly translates to, she wants to avenge Soviet, we think. Dirmo. That translates to shit. Russia stood up and placed his hand on his saber, making sure it was still there. When he confirmed it was, he followed his sister to meet the Tokugawan princess, wanting to send her out as fast as possible. Princestia Japonia, Rajastha Hisposi. That roughly translates to, does Princess Japan appear to be violent? Madame. That roughly translates to, I don't know. Russia grit his teeth, an uneasy feeling swelling up swiftly within him. He didn't know what to expect, but he dreaded the thought of another murder. Another one he'd be responsible for. He quickly found out why he was uneasy. Tokugawans were known to be excellent with swords and bows. If he had to fight Japan, he'd end up dead with this kingdom in the hands of an infant.
Узбек, если я умру, за это будет отвечать Беларусь. Она возглавит королевство.
That roughly translates to, Uzbek, if I die, Belarus is in charge. She'll lead the kingdom. Pirog, Litvia, Mersok, Servich, Hadkila, Chi? That roughly translates to, Lithuania is the heir. He is Servich. What about him?
Он младенец. Если я умру, Московия получит первую женщину во главе.
That roughly translates to, he is an infant. If I die, Muscovy is going to have its first woman in charge. Russia and Uzbekistan arrived at the doors to the throne room next. She opened the doors and Russia stepped inside, immediately drawing his saber. Tokugawa really wants me dead, America joked out, his voice cracking from fear. In front of Russia, a woman held a sword to America's throat, holding him in place by his hair. Tears pricked at America's eyes, his eyes making contact with Russia's. Behind Russia, the door swung open and was immediately followed by a gasp from what he could only assume to be his two eldest sisters. Atpusti Yevo. Russia's voice was cold and sharp, but the woman did nothing. That roughly translates to, let him go. She had long black hair and wore a white and pink ankle-length robe with large sleeves and a red sash holding it together at her waist. Her face was clear white with a red dot in the middle and red makeup. In her hand, she held a katana.
本当に彼が欲しいなら迎えに来てください.
That roughly translates to, if you really want him, come get him. Russia complied, slowly approaching the two. He held his saber tight, his eyes focused on the woman for any sudden movements. The last thing he wanted was America getting hurt. America did sniffle a bit, a sign he was crying, but Russia paid no attention to it. Step by step, he approached, each step increasing the amount of caution he had. Adna Ivo Mien. That roughly translates to, give him to me. Japan smiled devilishly, swinging her katana towards Russia. Russia brought his saber up and blocked the blade, grabbing America and quickly yanking him to safety. Japan then threw a small dagger at Russia, it piercing his side. He groaned in pain, but attacked back. The sound of blades hitting each other filled the air, but slowly Russia was growing weak. Japan knew this, wearing the taller man down significantly. She would attack near his legs 1 second, then immediately go after his neck. She was getting more frustrated, however, that Russia kept blocking each attack, Russia not wanting his life to end yet. With a quick counterattack, Russia pierced through Japan's kimono, pulling his saber back to open the wound. She swayed for a few minutes before falling to the floor with a few colorful words in her native language. Russia stood over her, his vision growing dark quickly. He stumbled back and fell to the floor, his eyes just barely able to see the ceiling. Russia, no! Russia, не спит. Russia! Russia, focus on us. Those were the last things Russia heard before his eyes closed and death consumed him. The last thing he remembers, however, is the feeling of him holding America's hand, with America resting his forehead on Russia's. He wished he could kiss him one last time, tell him he'd be okay. But to die for America was the greatest honor he'd ever experienced. Russia, Lyubov. That roughly translates to Russia, love. And that's the end of this chapter. Well, I don't think I can really continue after that. Because I've read the next chapter and I know he's actually dead. I also read the epilogue. So, I think I'm gonna leave it here. I'm gonna cut it here. I'll see y'all tomorrow. It'll be the binge comp. Early, because honestly, I can't. But anyway, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you.